saying right before I saw that happening.
Talking about your last name and how it's
the
easiest.
It's so easy. It's also my last name is literally 4 letters. It is a word that someone probably uses every single fucking day of their life.
That's true.
And they always want to put an S on the end of it.
That's true. I've seen it like that
on our schedule because somebody was stupid and then they just keep copy pasting it.
I just laughed the one time on when I was not married and how my last name was consistently misspelt, but it was misspelt and that
every
was
time
consistent,
it appeared. Yeah,
but it was misspelt differently every time it appeared, and I went, "How did you do that?" I'm like impressed, but I'm also like dumbfounded.
Yeah.
Anyways, when this is airing, it's gonna be, I'm pretty sure, like St. Patty's Day,
the week prior.
Ah, okay, the 10th.
I'm so tempted. I'm gonna have to, like, I need a rubber band to snap because I just heard it when I said that. It's the week prior. I keep slipping into a little bit of an Irish brogue, and I don't want to do that to you, but it's probably gonna come out because once it starts, I can't turn it off.
It's appropriate for today and what we're discussing. So yeah, we're going to talk about something to put you in the mood for St. Patrick's Day.
I'm probably going to get a little defensive because this movie we're going to talk this film franchise we're going to discuss today with you gets a lot of hate.
Some of it is very justified. This will be interesting. This is, I think, the first time where we will have like very differing opinions on things.
Well, you know what? It's not because we've talked about movies before where you're like, well, I liked them because they like were trying really hard. And I was like, but they did really bad. They did a really bad job.
Blood Rage, I am defensive of. I enjoy Blood Rage.
It's the same thing. It's just flipped this time. Beth really hates this and thinks it's a steaming pile of dog crap. And I'm like, I like them. They're fun.
I have opinions. Anyways, we are going to be talking about the film franchise of Leprechaun. Yes, that's right. That Leprechaun. Not just like the definition, which I looked up just to see like how much are we differing from, from the realm of stuff. And we're going to be discussing kind of, I think it'll be similar to My Bloody Valentine. We'll get in kind of the production and stuff like that of it, talk about that kind of stuff. And then we will very much give you a signal of some sort. Spoiler alert. Like, we're going to get into like some spoiler-y things about Leprechaun. I think that covers. Yeah. And then I guess we'll talk about opinions at that point. Just as a preface for this, prior to even this episode, I've never watched Leprechaun. I never even had an inkling to watch Leprechaun of like, yeah, I need to see that in my life. Like, I was like, no, I'm good. When I first started at the library, I remember Leprechaun Back to the Hood had just come out. Like, it was one of the newer horror films, and I remember shelving it at one point and being like, what the hell is this? I'm like, really? What is happening?
I think we've talked about it on here before in a different episode, probably when I was going on about Ghoul Doors, which is open, by the way. And
so is the bathroom door today.
I know, it's real weird.
I was about to tell you, hey, you're closer to, or you're easier for you to get up
I can, but what if I go to shut it and the reason that your toilet keeps bubbling is because Lubdon's in there and he like snatches me.
Are you gonna sneeze?
No, you're the one that runs into the realm of danger with sneezing. But I saw the original in my childhood, probably close to when it came out.
Yeah, that tracks.
At my friend's. I'm sure we rented the VHS tape from like the library or like Blockbuster or something. And I know I've talked about it before, but this is the house that has the weird door that's just like on a landing that opens to nothing. Like it's like a 4 or 5 foot drop onto like the roof of their rec room behind their house, where like it was meant clearly to have like where if you wanted to put like a back like deck off the back or a balcony off the back of your house, you could, and that would be how you could get to it. But it was just a door that opened to nothing on their stairs, and you had to go past it on the way upstairs. And my friend's older sister would tell us that like the leprechaun was going to be like outside, so don't ever look out the window because he'll just be there like watching you. And so we used to like sprint past it at night and like jump up the last like 4 steps to get away from it because we were so scared he was going to be there.
What is it about being a kid? Like, cause even if I'm alone in the house by myself, I won't lie, I sprint up the basement stairs sometimes. Like, oh, gotta yeet, gotta go, gotta get up there.
Yeah.
Don't want the Slender Man to get me.
I'm sure it's like a psychological thing because
Yeah.
you're going up the stairs and like usually the lights are at the bottom of the stairs, so you turn them off so it's dark and like your back is unguarded and it's open and it's already dangerous because you could fall down the stairs.
Yeah,
so.
you're just human lizard brains. Like, gotta protect you. Gotta
Yeah.
protect you at all costs.
Yeah.
Go up those stairs.
Yeah,
2 at a time.
absolutely. I can't do that because my cat takes that as like, oh, we're playing, and then like leaps at me and attacks my ankles.
You're
so
like,
yeah, I can't
Oh.
do that. But yeah, so we'll go back. We'll go back to the wonderful 90s. The first Leprechaun film came out in January of 1993. I was like 7 years old.
I was a wee one of 3. Like a fresh 3.
It was, yeah, and it's one of those cases where much like the Evil Dead or things like that came out and we're like, we are making a horror film. We want this to be like scary. This is what we're going for. And then audience reaction was like, oh, all right, we'll lean hard the other direction because everyone's sort of taken it a different way than we meant.
Yeah, because the first one's PG-13, and then the rest of them are like rated R. And you can tell, like, if you've watched more than one of them, you can tell there is a definite tonal shift. Like, we'll amp up the gore, so horror people will be like, yes.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, we're gonna make it funny for various reasons. I read that Warwick Davis, who you may know from Willow, or he plays in Star Wars as like the main Ewok.
Wicket. And he's in the robot costume for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and he was in the Boy Wizard franchise as a professor.
Yes. So, anyways, Warwick had taken this film role because, as he said, roles were kind of slow, which I get as a little person.
I don't know what he prefers to describe himself. He does have a form of dwarfism, so he is not, he is shorter than the average person. He does have like it's a form of dwarfism where he's mostly like, what is it called, proportional. But like, he does like have a different movement style when he walks and things like that, so you tend to get pigeonholed into certain kind of characters when you look different than like the other 100 people going out for a role.
Right. So roles were slow, and he was, at that point, he had only been in like Willow, Star Wars, like where he's playing some sort of small statured heroic type person. So when he saw and he was excited about this because he was like, yeah, I've never done like a horror movie, and also like I'm gonna get paid to be a lead in a role. And he had never been like an antagonist before, so he was like excited to do it. So he stars in it. This is Jennifer Aniston's first film.
Yes.
She, on the other hand, since then,
she's embarrassed by it.
Yeah, and I just want to be like, I don't know. I read that and I was a little disappointed because I was like, here's the thing. Everyone's got to get their start somewhere. Renee Zellweger was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4, as was Matthew McConaughey.
A lot of people get their start in horror because there's so many more independent productions of horror films
right
that you can get under your belt and build your reel.
Right.
And then you get like an agent and you get signed to bigger like production houses and stuff like that. So like there's a ton of people who start out in horror, just like there's a ton of people who start out on soap operas. Like
right. So I'm like, it just is what it is.
Mhm.
Like, did it commercially do stupend? No. Did it do well on, I was looking at the Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic scores, and I was like, I don't feel like these are accurate, because one, I feel like older movies, they don't tend to have as many
Yeah.
reviews, so the scores are just going to be on average lower.
I think they spent like $1 million to make it, and they earned 8.6.
They earned their budget back.
Yeah.
They just didn't get a lot of money out of it.
And truly, it's like not a very, I mean, like set wise, production wise, like it didn't look like it cost a whole lot of money. Like it wasn't, you know, where they were going to have to do a whole lot of like CGI editing or things like that. And this is 93, so like they didn't do that really then anyway.
No.
But
and it was filmed on the same set as Little House on the Prairie. So for some of the kill scenes, like they're literally on this in the Waltons, I think. So I thought that was hysterical. And Warwick at one point said he felt like it was blasphemous a little bit. It's like such wholesome shows, and they're making this horror movie. But he also read the script and like inadvertently said things funny.
yeah.
And then they're like, oh, we'll lean into that like a little bit. And then the audience was like, oh, we like that a lot.
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, next few films we'll just ham it up.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's give a basic, or
Can I tell you another really weird connection between this movie and another movie that was like huge for me in my formative years?
Sure.
Okay. So, Mark Holton, who plays Ozzy in this movie, was also in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He's Francis, who like wants Pee-wee's bike. He's like the asshole rich kid. And he's always chewing gum in that movie. And the first time you see him in this, he's putting a big old piece of gum in his mouth and chomping on it.
Oh, that's funny.
And it feels like a nod to Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And then when I was like trying to see, I'm like, did they do this on purpose? Because they came out like, it was not that much time between them. So like people probably still would have remembered him being in like Pee-wee's Big Adventure. But when I was looking it up to see like if that was intentional, I like fell down this Pee-wee's Big Adventure rabbit hole. And do you know that movie?
Yeah, I've seen that movie.
So when he gets picked up by the trucker and he's telling him the story about Large Marge, right? And he's like, tell him Large Marge sent ya. And there's
terrifying.
that weird claymation.
Terrifying.
Do you know who did that claymation?
Who did that claymation?
The Chiodo brothers.
I did not know that, but
I didn't know that either. That was my like do the more you know moment.
That actually makes a lot of sense how terrifying it was. So they're really good at making spooky stuff.
So that was my little 6 degrees of separation horror connection for you for today.
Yeah, I again had never seen these movies before, so I watched them, and I think we should give a basic plot synopsis because the first one in tone is different than the rest of them, I would say, because you really are just being introduced to this leprechaun character, and the other ones, it's like they were just like, yeah, we think you know who this guy is, so we're not going to give you kind of any a lot of,
and it's not really like aside from like some later down the line, there's not a whole lot of like continuation between because he essentially is killed in every single one of these, and then he just comes back. Like, they find a way to bring him back every time.
They don't even explain. It's not even like in like other slasher films, like in the Friday the 13th franchise, like we know that Jason like gets it. And then like he still comes back. And there's like at least continuity between like, oh, we killed Jason, he was buried. Oh, a lightning bolt like struck him under this tree and it reanimated. So he's a zombie.
Yeah.
He's zombie Jason.
You don't really even get that.
You don't get that at all.
It's just like the next movie opens and it's like, oh, okay, well that's how we're gonna get him this time. Cool, let's see where this is going.
Yep.
So yeah. So the first one,
sorry, mini spoiler, but
It's okay. I'm just telling you that, like, you could watch any of them at any time. Like, you don't have to watch them in order for any kind of story continuation.
They're like mini, like, short stories in the same universe, but you could read them in any order. That's how it feels.
There you go. So the OG, as I keep calling it in my notes here so I could keep it straight, the most basic, like, spoiler-free summary of it is that a vengeful leprechaun believes a family has stolen his pot of gold, and as he hunts them, they attempt to locate his gold to mollify him. That's it. This is the most basic spoiler-free thing to tell you. To add just a tiny bit more to that, the movie opens in 1983, so it opens 10 years prior to where the story of the film takes place. And a man named Dan O'Grady is coming home to North Dakota after a recent trip to Ireland, where he's from. And you find out that he stole a leprechaun's pot of gold. And he's like, hell yeah, I'm rich. Honey, I'm home. We're going to live the good life. He hides the gold and then finds out that the leprechaun has been tracking him this whole time as an attempt to get his gold back.
Yep.
And from there, murders start happening. Dan has a stroke and ends up in a hospital, and then we jump forward 10 years.
Yep, that about covers it.
Yeah, without spoiling anything else. That is like where the movie starts off. So that's your spoiler. I didn't
realize it was North Dakota that they were at. I just knew that, like, it wasn't anywhere. I was like, it seems kind of western.
It's like vaguely deserty feeling.
Yes,
but also, yes, very like prairie-esque.
Yes.
So,
yeah, that fits. Yeah. That tracks. Yeah, I mean, otherwise, the
other thing of note is that this was the first in-house movie made by Trimark.
Yes.
So, well, for like theatrical release, like they probably did stuff before that as they were establishing, but
yes, that was their first big production. And the director I read also fought for they were so impressed with Jennifer Aniston that they fought to have Jennifer Aniston casted, which is also why I'm like, ma'am, like, I realize you're embarrassed now, but like that director gave you a break, which entail put chops under your belt so you can just like move on and then blow up with Friends.
Right.
Like, Friends really wasn't that far after.
It was only like a year or two after this.
Yeah. So I'm just like, and I thought that was funny too, because I think she's very Rachel Green-esque.
Oh, she's Rachel in this movie. Yeah. Her character.
Yeah. And I was just like,
I also laughed because I know this is like a thing in movies, because like the thing that I always think of is like Matthew Lillard was like 30 in Scream playing a high schooler. Like, right. He was like 28. He was like very close to 30. And she looks like she's like 27 playing an 18-year-old.
I thought she looked like she was early 20s, but I also wasn't sure what age she was supposed to be in this movie.
She's supposed to be like late teens, early 20s, but she like, to me, she looks older than the age she's supposed to be. But anyway.
So yeah, I mean, I think that Warwick has to wear prosthetics throughout this movie. Those
Gabe Bartalos did the makeup for it.
And they did there's some scenes where they have some special effects in it. There are some scenes where they do, I don't want to like spoil too much yet, so I won't get into what they had to do for some special effects, but
we'll come back to that.
And overall, when this came out, it did not do well at it made back its money, but it didn't do well.
It is essentially a cult film.
Yes.
Would you not say that was an appropriate description?
It's appropriate,
for it?
Yes, because It was commercially kind of a flop, but like critically very much a flop. Like, people hated this movie when it came out.
Like, reviews were bad, but commercially successful. Like,
yes.
They made money, but people were like, wow, this is trash. But then they were like, well, we're going to keep making trash then because you paid to see it. So give us your money.
And like home video rentals, like, were solid. So it's like, well, why not?
I was going to say, I have a little bit more background for it. So the writer, Mark Jones, basically, he
I didn't know
he
if we were
worked
gonna
in
talk about that.
yeah, well, he worked in TV, and he essentially kept seeing these like Lucky Charms commercials and was like, man, that would be like real fun to do a movie where like the Lucky Charms leprechaun was the bad guy. And so then he saw Critters and was like, oh, like having tiny, like the bad guy, the monster, the creature, the critter, whatever.
Which Critters was successful.
Is like, that's also kind of fun having like this little antagonist. So this is like when he was inspired, and he started writing it in like 1985.
Right. So he wrote it in 85. It took all the way into the 90s for this to get made, which so I was like, holy crap. Like,
yeah. And he started off with like a totally different, like we said, vision for Lubden the leprechaun. Like he wanted him to be like really scary and disgusting and horrible, and then, as Beth mentioned, like Warwick kind of unintentionally gave the character a more comedic read, and they were like, oh, okay, like let's do this. They shot it in 1991. Terminator 2 Judgment Day had just finished production at the same studios.
So funny.
And okay, I don't want to talk about that yet. So the makeup effects for this, like as we said, he wears prosthetics. Applying the makeup took 3 hours, and then to take it off would take 40 minutes. And Warwick Davis did not really enjoy this process.
I can't imagine. I mean, yeah, that you said 3 hours. Like,
it would take 3 hours to apply it, and then when he needed to take it off, it was 40 minutes to take it off.
Right.
So you can imagine, like he's probably like that all day for the entire shoot,
right.
And then at the end of the day, it's taking almost an hour to get it off.
Right. Like, good God.
And he was just like, the only good thing was that I really liked just like chatting with Gabe like while he was putting them on. So we had like a lot of really weird but fun conversations. They had this really aggressive marketing campaign for this before it came out. Like Trimark was just like, we're going to partner with the NBA and the American Stock Exchange. And then they like couldn't get either of those. So like, we're going to partner with Domino's Pizza and Subway. And they had a partnership with, is it General Mills that makes Lucky Charms?
Yes.
With Lucky Charms. So they were like really hardcore pushing this Lucky Charms angle in the movie.
I'm really surprised that General Mills was like,
well, once they saw the movie, when it was finished, they were like, absolutely not. We're pulling our sponsorship for this. Like, we don't want anything to do with this. And so they're like, well, then that means we have to reshoot this scene where we have a box of Lucky Charms in it. And so they're like, well, fine then, like, screw you. We're gonna reshoot that scene, and it's like very obviously like supposed to be Lucky Charms, but like we changed the name. Are you happy
It's like
now?
a red box. It's very like generic cereal that's, instead of Lucky Charms, it's Lucky Stars.
Yeah. But then there is a line at the end of the movie where a character is like, fuck you, Lucky Charms.
Yes.
And that was a very pointed like diss at General Mills. Like, fine, we don't need your fucking money.
Yes.
I love that. I love a spite quote.
I read that. I thought this was weird though. It says novelist Armistead Maupin was aware of the production and included it in his novel Maybe the Moon, focusing on a little person based on his friend Tamara Detraux. I hope that's right. It's French. Yeah, I just can't imagine. Like, so after this was released, obviously, like, it didn't do as well as the tater tot. It didn't do as well as I think they had hoped, and then critically, like, a lot of reviews came in like very, very negative. But like, it has since then gained a cult following, and multiple movies have been made. Let's see, I think the sequel Leprechaun 2 came out the very next year.
It did. It came out in 1994 and it earned $2.3 million in the box office.
Oh, and see, so
they're making money off of these, even though everyone's like, this sucks, it's garbage.
I only watched the first two because I said that's all I want to stomach.
I've seen them all, folks,
and I thought the second one was superior in every way.
I do think the second one is a better movie, but it is also just a totally different vibe. Like, I do enjoy the first one. So here's my overarching disclaimer of this is, do I think that these movies are like good movies necessarily? No. But do I think they're fun? Yes. I have a blast every time I watch them. Especially when Sci-Fi used to show like all of them back to back on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah,
I would sit and watch all of them.
As I said when we had discussions about this, like, this is not my kind of cup of tea. I was very curious, and so I wanted to kind of go into the lore a little bit of Leprechauns, because I was like, how close is this to, because they do use Leprechaun lore throughout the films, so they really hunker down on the plot of the film, like, and this isn't really a spoiler because Britta told you that he's looking for his pot of gold, so he has 100 gold pieces. So it's not like, so that's like, I knew that's like a common trope of like, yeah, leprechauns have a pot of gold and it's 100 gold pieces and they have to count it. But I was like, are leprechauns supposed to be like really evil entities? And so I got mixed things, because they were saying, one of the things I was reading said that in early, so these have been around since the 8th century, text talking about, and then they made a 13th century burlesque version of this. And they talk about, they talk about like an Irish king falling asleep on the beach and waking himself up, being dragged to the seas by 3 like leprechauns. And he captures his abductors, who grant him 3 wishes in exchange for release. They're supposed to be solitary creatures whose primary occupation is making and cobbling shoes, which in the first movie, that is like a very strong point that is made. It's a plot point
through all of them. He is always making commentary about shoes.
And the second one, I felt like that was only like one. It was a very small, like, blink and you miss it type of like thing said. So I was like, oh, but that even though that wasn't their sole focus, there was other parts of the stuff that other parts of the folklore that I felt like they were focusing on. So I was like, I'm not gonna get too beat up about that. So William Butler Yeats, which I didn't realize, I didn't realize that he was into, that's not something I covered in reading his work, so I didn't realize he was super into like classifying fairies and folk.
I think that's a very Irish thing, is that like so much of Irish culture is like storytelling and like oral tradition and keeping stories alive for generations. So like you grow up hearing the stories about like the Tir na Nog and like the fairies and the Seelie Court and the Unseelie and like the banshees. And so when you hear like, you know, howling at night, it's a death omen.
Right.
And so like, I mean, I grew up on Darby O'Gill stories, like Darby O'Gill and the Little People. Like that was a huge part of my childhood years. And the movie where they cast a Scottish man to play an Irish man, and it's terrible. But, yeah, so that's, I mean, they, much like a puka, which is another like mischievous fae creature in Irish culture, like leprechauns were not, they're part of the Seelie Court. They're not dark fairies. Right. They're mischievous.
Right.
My thing with this movie, with like the aspects they chose to, as you said, with like his coins, and it's like he's missing one of them, is that they like sort of implied that it's like tied to like his soul in this. I'm like, so are you trying to say this is like a Horcrux situation and that's why he's got to get it back? Because to me, I just thought it was like a very like, that's my money, I earned it making shoes, give me my money back.
I mean, there's similar like vibes for folklore, like with vampires. Like one of the like old traditional things for vampires, if you want to distract a vampire, you gotta throw grains of rice in front of them because they feel compelled to count them. So you can like rice, there's a lot of rice, so it's like pew, and then you're like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna run away and run to a house where I'm invited but you're not, just going off of that tradition. So I feel like it felt like, even though it's different, like it just feels very much of the same like how can we protect ourselves with numbers? Give him back his
math.
So yeah, they're supposed to be good, but they're not also supposed to be, they're not completely good. They're mischievous, and they can carry out more evil deeds, but usually they're more compelled to just be mischievous, which makes me wonder.
It's like it's like the trickster lore.
What are leprechauns doing when they're not messing with humans?
Chilling, minding their own business.
That's
moisturized, unbothered, minding their own business.
I hope
maybe
so.
Trying to hit on some selkies. Like, who knows?
That's fair.
You know? Should I say anything about like production wise before we like the production things, and then we'll go into descriptions?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, so as we said, Leprechaun 2 comes out. It came out a year later in 1994. Again, critics were like garbage, which is why.
Wait. Did you know the subtitle of this movie?
Yes. One wedding and lots of funerals.
Amazing. I did not know that, but I love it.
All of the subtitles are like silly. This is why I also am just like, I don't take a whole lot of stock from what critics say about anything, whether it's like books or movies or TV shows or music. I don't care. Because to me, that's just your opinion, and everyone has differing opinions.
That's just like,
and so
your opinion, man.
That's just like your opinion, man. And so, like, you know, we're of the generation that like Siskel and Ebert was still a thing, and they would like tell you what they thought about the new movies coming out. There was even a animated like adult cartoon TV show called The Critic about a critic,
yes,
and his catchphrase was "It stinks."
Yes,
I loved that show.
I loved that show too, but
John Lovett.
I was clearly too young to actually understand what was happening, but I just liked that it was animated. I remember watching it and being like, this is great. And I'm like, Beth, do you even know what's happening?
Yeah.
Probably not.
But to me, I'm also just like, I have known like a lot of, because, you know, I do like theater things. I venture into the theater world. And so in the various places that I have worked in theater, I have known a lot of theater critics. And I have also seen those same critics who like play favorites and will gush about someone that they know personally and love and then shit on everything else they see. I have seen them fall asleep during a show that they were there to review. So I do not give a shit what critics say about things. All I care about is like what happens when I experience the thing. So I would rather hear word of mouth from people I know who maybe have similar interests or who know what my interests are, saying like, hey, I think you'd really like this, or like, ooh, you are really gonna hate this. I put more stock in that. So the fact that like these just continuously get panned by critics, I don't care. So
I will say, as somebody, because I enjoyed Leprechaun 2 more than the first Leprechaun. I felt like everything that I liked about the first one was amplified in the second one, and it felt more Irish.
It does. It really leans hard into the Irish aspect of it and more folklore-y type.
Yes, because that's
more fantastic elements than just like, oh, it's a leprechaun in the normal world.
Yeah, that's what I guess, you know, if I'm thinking about a movie about fairies or something like that, that's what I want. I want like kind of elements of the fantastic, because the first one, in my opinion, feels like they're all trapped at this farm. It feels very like at one point Jennifer Aniston's like, we don't even know what we're fighting here, and I'm like, you're right, you don't. And I'm like, and I guess it's logical for you to be like, there's no such thing as like fairies and stuff like that. And I'm like, that's fair, but I'm also, as an audience member, I'm disappointed because we know we have been following this like track all along. So I just, I was like, I just like in the second movie, you still get you get a little more backstory, and you get a little more like complicitness, and like, we're dealing with a leprechaun here. What does a leprechaun do? And then like, we're going to list all this folklore so that you, the audience, and everybody else in this cast is all caught up. Okay, let the killing commence.
Yeah, so it made, like I said, it made 2.3 million, and it was the last of this franchise to have a theatrical release until essentially it was rebooted in 2014 with Leprechaun Origins. They, from this point forward, like 3 through the rest are like direct to video releases.
Which at this point in just kind of the DVD world, that is fine.
Yeah.
It's okay to be direct to DVD. Like, movies now don't even get a chance to do that. Like, if they suck and they go on streaming, like, they may never get a physical release, so you're missing out on all that, essentially, money that you would have otherwise recouped in a DVD release.
Which is why it is important to have fair pay and streaming rights for the people who work on movies.
Very much
This is
so.
why we just had an actor strike and a writers guild strike.
Yes. And it's also important to buy physical media because they like to mess around with streaming, and there might be stuff that you're like, this will stay on Netflix forever, and it's not going to.
But I bought it on Amazon for $25.99. You don't own that. It's in the fine print that no one reads. You paid them $25.99, but they can get rid of it at any time.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is essentially why I've never bought a movie.
Which is why I laugh every time I think about Coworker Scissorhands being like, oh, I just think physical media, it has no point anymore. I got rid of all my DVDs. And I was like, I have 500 DVDs.
As we sit.
I will never get rid of them. You can pry them from my cold, dead hands.
As we sit in my basement.
Surrounded by your VHS tapes.
Surrounded by VHS tapes.
Okay, so yeah, so moving forward into the direct to home release, we have Leprechaun 3, Leprechaun in Vegas, which came out a year later in 1995. These are all still slasher comedies as they come out.
I think, yeah, it's, and in the second one, they play up more of the comedy. Like, they're, at this point, it's just like Evil Dead 2, where they're like, oh, Bruce Campbell's funny. Oh, we're gonna play this up.
Leprechaun 4 in Space.
Oh my god.
Came out in 1997.
Wait, they did this before Jason?
And then it adds science fiction into the mix now. So it's now a
god.
Science fiction black comedy slasher film. That one's wild. That's probably my least favorite of all of them.
I just feel like it's very difficult to use space as a medium. I'm just saying in general. Jason's not great either.
It's interesting. Then we have Leprechaun 5, which is more commonly known as Leprechaun in the Hood. Some places it is still listed as like Leprechaun 5 or Leprechaun 5 in the Hood. This came out in 2000. In this one, he's looking for his magic flute that gets stolen rather than his money.
Okay.
In Leprechaun 4 in Space, he is on a marine spaceship trying to get a princess that he wants to marry. Like, they have this princess that they rescue on the ship.
Is she alien-ish? Okay. Not that it matters. I'm just curious, like, where are you rescuing this princess from in space?
Yeah. So she's on a spaceship full of Marines, and he is just like, I want to marry her, and gets on the ship.
We didn't tell Leprechaun 2, that's essentially the plot of Leprechaun 2, is he is searching for a bride.
Yes. There's like some backstory to it that makes sense, but yes, he is intending to wed someone, and that is the driving force behind him in that. But there's still, in 2 and 3, there's still an element of the like, oh, someone has some of my gold.
Oh yeah, that's like
Yeah.
Very big. And I imagine in Vegas even more so.
I'll dive in deeper.
Yeah.
Then Leprechaun in the Hood got a sequel. Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Leprechaun in the Hood was also the last the last film to be released by Trimark before, because they're done. They were donezo in 2001. So it was direct to video, and it was the last movie that they released. And then Leprechaun, Back to the Hood, and the is spelled with a THA because, you know, late 90s, early 2000s.
Cringe.
Yeah. It came out in 2003. I was a junior in high school. And It's a standalone sequel to Leprechaun in the Hood. There's like nothing that is actually tied. There's like none of the characters come back. There's like no actual references to the plot of that movie. It's now the 6th one in this franchise. Warwick Davis is still playing Lubden.
Man, why not though? Steady paycheck for him.
And in this one, he's back to like essentially like a group of like youths, as Schmidt would say, stole his gold. So he's back to looking for his gold. And they are essentially just like, hot damn, we found gold. We are spending all of this, living it up. And then there has been a reboot of this. Now, in the newer movies, starting with Leprechaun Origins and then Leprechaun Returns. Leprechaun Origins was 2014. Leprechaun Returns is 2018.
I found out looking into these franchises. Fun fact for you wrestling girlies, male coworker. WWE produced 2014's
I was just gonna say that.
Origins. And the wrestler, formerly known as, or currently, I don't know if he's still wrestling, as Hornswoggle, or Hornswoggle, depends on who's pronouncing his name, is playing the Leprechaun. And I lost my GD mind in reading that. I went, oh my God.
He's only the Leprechaun in Origins, because in Leprechaun Returns, he's played by, what's his name? Hang on, I got it in my notes. He's played by Lyndon Porco, who is also like he also has a form of dwarfism. He's the body double for Chucky.
Oh, okay.
So that's the other horror tie for these new ones. Tonally very different, story-wise very different. These are much more like your stereotypical, like what you think of when you think of a horror slasher film. Like they're not supposed to be funny, they're more supposed to be scary. The Leprechaun is back to being more of like a Red Hood, or like the more malicious, more of an unseelie court type of fae, like a dark, scary, monstery thing. I think he kind of has like he's like grosser and scarier in these ones than Warwick's kind of sillier take.
I think his prosthetics in the first one are the scariest.
Yeah.
Like, all the prosthetics start to get better as the movies go on, because, makeup technology is improving.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, the budget, which it was like $1.5 million for the second one, as opposed, I'm like, that $500,000 was stretched, because the production value of it was much higher in the second one than the first one. I was like, ooh, look, there's actual special effects. That's exciting.
I think I'm looking at the picture now of him in the 2014 Leprechaun Origins, and it's like giving a little bit of like orc from Lord of the Rings, a little bit of like 20.
Oh, he's very scary.
Yeah, it's like much more like the 30 Days of Night vampire-y kind of.
If them and an orc had a baby, that's yes.
Yeah, so it's
I wouldn't even have known it was Hornswoggle.
Yeah, it's like much spookier in Origins. And then it is also like, it has such like a tropey to me, like storyline to it. Like it's essentially a group of like American young people on vacation in like Ireland who they're kind of like backpacking-esque. It's like it's two couples, it's two girls, two guys. The one is like very much into like archaeology and history and things like that. So she is like kind of the primary reason they're there and doing this, and everyone else is sort of along for a ride. And they are essentially misled. They are like backpacking, they find this little town, and a guy's like, oh, are you into these like historic things? Well, you gotta go check out this thing then, which then is like an intentional move to like, all right, we sacrificed you to the leprechaun, so we're safe.
Ah, Oh, that's interesting though. It is tropey, but that's still an interesting.
It's much more like typical horror film. So if that is more your speed, I still don't think it's like a great movie, but it is more like, yeah, that's what I expect from 2010s horror. So, and again, he's much creepier in that, like scary, classic scary. So I think that is kind of all of our production stuff for this, and your little crash course in like Leprechaun, Sealy, Fae history.
Yeah. I mean, I think it, and all of them touch upon it. I don't know how true like the 100 gold coins is, which is like a plot point, but that is something that I have heard through folklore.
Yeah.
That they usually have like a set amount of gold coins that they like to have.
Well, sure. I mean, you know how much money you have.
Yeah.
You know what's in your bank account.
Usually. If I don't, I got an app for that. It's always a mild surprise.
It's generally, the general thing that you think of with leprechauns. Like the story that everybody knows is if you catch a leprechaun, they have to grant you a wish.
Right.
But then there's like some folklorists who say like, yeah, but do they really have to grant you a wish? Or is that just their clever way of getting you to be like, okay, I'll let you go.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, well, I'll let you go if you give me a new car. Okay, great. I'll give you a new car. It's at the end of the rainbow. Go get it. You can't find the end of a rainbow. And by the time you figure that out, I'm long gone.
Or they give you like a Matchbox car. Call it a day.
Right.
You asked for a new car. You didn't say that you wanted a drivable new car.
Exactly. And so, there's a lot of differing like rules in that folklore. Generally, it's like if you catch them and you're like looking at them, they can't get away from you. So like you have to keep a watchful eye on them.
Mm-hmm.
And they are like a more trickster type character in folklore. So they will do like anything. Like she just said, like loopholes in how you phrase things.
Right. Like that's always, if you read any books about fairies or the fae, like names are a very big thing. And like fae don't want you to know their true name, because if you know their true name, you have power over them. So you shouldn't be giving your true name out either as like a human. There's stuff about iron, like wrought iron makes like fae can't touch it. It's like poisonous to them. I'm trying to think of other things that they have that like, I mean, it's just like there's little things, and I feel like they didn't just use leprechaun lore. It was like fae lore overall, because that's a much bigger pot.
Yeah, and there's always it's always like kind of a battle of wits. Like leprechauns are very smart in folklore, and so the only way they really show that in these movies is with his stupid rhymes, and they're not good rhymes, but he's got them.
He's got them. Yeah, and he's pretty good at tricking humans too.
Yeah, and there is like a little bit he'll play on like the literal sense rather than the figurative sense of what somebody says, and it's like you weren't specific enough. So yeah, they take a little bit of that in there. I am gonna make like another Darby O'Gill reference later when we're talking about Leprechaun 2, but I'll get more into who the heck Darby O'Gill is then. So I think at this point, like now, it's like if you venture forth Darby spoilers, stop listening if you're ever gonna watch these and you care about us telling you the story.
If you just support us, but you are curious about them, and we do spoil it for you, then they're not as scary. But I will tell you, these are not. I've watched a lot of movies, and I don't think these are scary.
They're not.
Like, especially
they're really not.
I would say everything up until Leprechaun Origins is not scary. It's more funny than scary.
And I mean, as they move from theatrical release to direct to video, they do get a little more graphic in the things that you see. But for the first two films, largely the like kills, you don't even see them happen.
Yes.
You see aftermath maybe.
Yes. And even like the aftermath's not too terrible, because I imagine they didn't have the budget to make it.
Yeah. So if you're squeamish, you don't like a lot of like gore or things like that. Like, this is maybe like a safer way to dip your toes in.
Yeah. The first two I would say would be solid. Like you would be okay watching those.
Yeah.
Not too bad.
Not Origins or Returns though. Anything in like the 2014, 2018 era is much more slasher speed.
So, yeah, I think that's your fair warning. We're gonna dive in.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do the horns again. I did a little Irish thing for you, so that's all you get.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say, and this isn't, I guess, too spoilery to start with, but in Leprechaun 1, the guy, the love interest, that is Jennifer Aniston's love interest, I thought looked like Tom Cruise.
Oh.
I think that's who I was thinking of. Hold on. But like a really jacked Tom Cruise. Like, I've been to the gym.
I'm trying to bring up a picture of him too. I mean, he is like very, I mean, I would not have been surprised if he was just like a male model in the 90s or like I don't know. He is like a very like buff 90s dude.
Look at like the side profile. His face looks like Tom Cruise, but not on Tom Cruise's. Also, he's tall, so not on Tom Cruise's body. I was like a very generic version of Tom Cruise, which was odd.
I can kind of see it.
It's between that and like the smiles. I was like, what is happening right now? If like Tom Cruise and like Dennis Quaid had a weird genetic baby,
looks a little bit like Jim Carrey.
Now I have to look at him again. Maybe if Tom Cruise, Dennis Quaid, and Jim Carrey.
I definitely get more Dennis Quaid because that's what I would have said when you show me those pictures. I can see where you're getting Tom. It's the hair is what's giving like a lot of Tom Cruise.
Yeah. So if they all had a baby, it would be this guy. I feel like
the other thing I'm saying is these are all like dudes who were like good-looking, popular guys at that time in the 90s.
Yes. So,
the fashion, my God, the fashion is so early 90s. She's got those like cut off jean shorts with like flower applique patches and like the hunky, like Nathan, the hunky guy that she's just talking about, like does not wear a sleeve. He's like allergic to fucking sleeves, so his arms are just always out.
To be fair, he's like painting a house, so like
the guy that I was talking about earlier that was Francis and Pee-wee is wearing like some bib overalls the whole time and like it's like it reminds me of like an Uncle Joey from Full House shirt. Like
so when me and my husband watched this, because I said, do you want to watch this with me? And he's like, not really, but I've never seen it, so we watched it together. I said, so what do you think the best part of that was? And he's like, Jennifer Aniston's legs.
Oh God.
She's got immaculate fashion in this movie though. So she's like supposed to be this like outcast from LA, like not outcast, like her and her dad moved to this like farmhouse that they got for cheap.
Yeah.
And you find out that this is the house that the O'Grady's lived 10 years prior, and it's been like for sale, kind of abandoned. So he bought it for super cheap.
Right.
Also, we thank the dad. We're like, did this actor just be like, put me in it, but for like the least amount of time possible?
Probably.
Because he shows up with Jennifer Aniston, and at first I was like, are they together? Like a couple? Oh, and then like, that's my dad. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he just leaves. He just leaves her in this like kind of creepy house by herself for hours on end. I'm like, where is he? Like, what is he doing?
Dad stuff.
I'm like, you just moved in. Why are you not actually moving in?
Yeah.
Get your stuff unpacked. What are you doing?
Fair. Oh God, where's my notes now? I closed out my tab.
Warwick Davis in this his makeup is very scary in this, like in the first film, like comparative to the second one.
Yeah, it's very, I feel like his prosthetics, like they're more, I don't have a great explanation. It's like, it's bumpier. So he looks more like he's got like pustules, or like,
very much
like warts or things like that.
Yes.
And then that's all gone in the second one.
Yeah,
and he just looks old and like weathered, and he's got that eyeliner.
And he's got very luxuriant hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out he takes his top hat. No, it gets knocked off and he's bald at the top. And I was like, wait. You got this beautiful wig luxuriant hair that goes down to half your back, like the middle of your back. And then you're bald on top? What?
Yeah. Well, because he's always wearing a hat. It's that traction alopecia, Beth. It's a real thing.
I was just like, buddy, what is happening?
So when we were giving you the general synopsis of the beginning of it too, the things that I did not say were that when Dan came back from Ireland, like the point of him going to Ireland was that I think it's established that like his mom died and he was supposed to bury her. But he comes home and he like smashes the urn that his mom is supposed to be in and the coins come out. And I was like, you could have just dumped it out. Why did you smash it? You're stupid. But then the leprechaun shows up. Lebden shows up. He kills Dan's wife. In the process of this, like that's when he has the stroke. But as he's having the stroke, he traps the leprechaun in a crate by placing a 4-leaf clover on top of it. And so like the 4-leaf clover is like sort of the thing that is like warding off the leprechaun. Like he cannot overpower it. So even this tiny little clover sitting on top of a wooden crate lid is enough to trap him in there for a decade.
So he's just chilling in there for a decade. And then Jennifer Aniston and her dad move into the house, and she goes into like the house hasn't been touched in 10 years. Looks like Dan just kind of had a stroke, left the house, and it just like all the old furniture and stuff still there. I was like, I get it, because you have to have stuff in the house, but also the 10-year-old food is still in there.
Yeah. Oh, another horror connection with this is that Robert High Gorman, who plays the younger, what is the character's name that's always with Ozzy, the younger kid in it. He was in the film version of Sometimes They Come Back, which is a short story by Stephen King.
Okay.
He played one of the main character's sons.
Okay. Weird that it's not showing
Alex.
Okay. We were very annoyed with Alex the entire time. Alex was making things worse rather than making things better.
That's like such a like kid in a 90s movie.
Yes.
Like he's kind of a little shit.
Yes, like he's mean to Ozzy.
Yes.
Ozzy is a developmentally delayed man, and then like
I didn't even take it as him being developmentally delayed. I just thought he was like very naive. Like,
and maybe,
and they're all supposed to be younger than they look. Like, there's a point when like they're supposed to be like in their early like 20s ish, and they're like, yeah, this bunch of kids, and I'm like, these people are like in their 30s,
except for Alex. Alex like looks like a 13-year-old,
and Alex is supposed to be 10. So I think that's part of the problem too, is I think that like Ozzy is just supposed to be like a very like naive, like, you know, like probably 21-year-old, but he's being played by like a 30-year-old dude.
Yeah.
And so like he's just, yeah, he like believes in like the fantastic-y things, and he like believes in stories and stuff.
He's like, when they talk about leprechauns and stuff, so now that we can, when they finally are like, this is a leprechaun, like Ozzy is the one that's like, I know the mythology of this, let me tell you, and then nobody wants to listen to him.
Yes.
And then Ozzy and Alex are the ones that find this gold, and then Ozzy swallows this point of,
it's so stupid,
killed me. So like the reason that they like the leprechaun, they find this gold, Ozzy and Alex,
at the end of a rainbow,
Ozzy and Alex do. Was the leprechaun awake at this point or not? Because the kids inevitably are the ones that mistakenly awaken the leprechaun. Like Jennifer Aniston or somebody pushes the crate and knocks the clover off.
I think Ozzy does it because he goes down in the basement and because he thinks the leprechaun can make himself sound like other people. Like, it's been established at this point he sounded like Dan's wife. He can like make his voice sound like other people. So he's in the crate awake, and he makes himself sound like a child, and he convinces Ozzy that he's like a little kid who's trapped inside. And so Ozzy, in an attempt to like save this kid, knocks everything off the top of the crate to take the lid off, and then the leprechaun gets out.
Right.
But he tells Ozzy, I'm a shoemaker
Mhm.
and I came here looking for my gold. Have you seen my gold? And Ozzy's like, holy shit, I met a leprechaun, and goes to tell everyone, and they're like, you're an idiot.
Right. So they do find the gold, and the leprechaun's out and about at this point, and they're looking at it. Alex is a little more with it than Ozzy. Alex is like, oh, we can get you that brain operation, which killed me. I was like, this is such an asshole thing to say to a guy. Also, like, that's not a thing that can be done. Like, he's not going to get a brain operation to, like, fix this. Like, what is this? That was bad script writing.
Yes.
Well,
I don't even know if it is bad script writing as so much as like that is just the kind of like jokes and writing that were in movies at that time. Like
Right.
if you go back and watch even Friends, if you go back and watch Friends now in 2024 and you watch the episodes from the first season, like jokes were more like mean-spirited in films and television then. And it wasn't taken as mean-spirited, but that is just like how like things were written in popular culture.
Right.
So like I think that is just a dated sign of like what most things were accepted as then, less so than just like this person is a shit writer.
Ozzy, it's like the plot point. Ozzy swallows.
Well, because he's testing it. Because he goes, oh, I've seen like
Like,
in movies,
right,
like
you
you
bite
bite the
it.
gold to see if it like is soft. But he goes, you bite it to see if it's like made of chocolate or whatever. And he accidentally swallows it. Which I'm like, how do you do that, man?
But I'm also like at this point. So I'm like, practical me is like, you swallowed a coin. First of all, that's a pretty big coin.
It is.
I don't know how.
It's bigger than a penny. It's bigger than a quarter.
I don't know how your intestines aren't like blah, 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 blah. But also I'm like, why can't he just shit it out? Let's give him some X-Lax. Let's go. Let's get this moving. And I'm like, I don't like.
But by the time they realize they need to get it out of him, like, do you really want to have like explosive fucking diarrhea when there's like a monster hunting you? Not the right time.
No.
And that doesn't just come out immediately. It's going to be a few days. That's why when like your dog eats something, you have to check the poop for like a week before you see it.
It was just, I was so frustrated.
I know.
I was like, this. You had an opportunity to do this any other way, and you did it this way. And I'm like, I guess, but I hate it. I hate this entire plot line. It's not great. Warwick Davis kind of, once he's awakened, wreaking havoc and like the special. So this is the special effects I wanted to talk about. So he is wreaking havoc. He is terrorizing this group of youths essentially to get his gold back. Youths. And there are so many silly things that it, like took it over the top where you're just like, oh, like this is a horror movie to like, oh, this is downright silly. So they at one point take Ozzy and Alex take the gold to like a pawn shop essentially to see what they could, if it was real and like what they could get out of it, like what kind of money they could get out of it. And they borrow like one coin. The shopkeeper does to like look at it, and they're keeping the rest of it. And the shopkeeper has like a toy car there. So first of all, like like the leprechaun goes and gets his gold back. He kills the shopkeeper in the process. He's
with a pogo stick.
Yeah, he's pogo sticked to death. Which you don't see. Like you only see like a very quick shot of the aftermath. You see him pogo sticking, but you don't actually see the pogo stick meeting the face of the guy. He then takes off in like a toy metal car. This is like
go-kart.
This is like the type of car that like my tater tot would be driving, because that's about the size. And he's speeding along this country road.
It's so funny though, because you just see the cop sitting in the car and you just see him coming up in the distance.
And a lot of this stuff is done where it's sped up on camera, so it's like comically fast, and it feels very Benny Hill music-esque, where it's like, and you're just like, oh my god.
Yes.
And this happens multiple times with this like comically fast. So they at one point are trying to figure out how to defeat this leprechaun, and they put the two and two that this was the O'Grady house, so they go to try to visit O'Grady, who is in a nursing home, and The leprechaun beats them there, and so he's chasing them in a wheelchair. So I did read that in order for Warwick Davis, so that was Warwick Davis actually wheelchairing, like wheeling about. Jennifer Aniston had to run in slow motion so that Warwick could keep up with her because it was a very unwieldy wheelchair. And then they sped it up to a point where it's like, it is so comically ridiculous that it's sped up that you get the scene that you get. So she's in slow motion, he's in regular motion. So when they sped it up, it looks like she's going fast and he's going super fast. And they do that a couple times with him walking and stuff too. Like, he'll be walking and then like they speed it up where he's like, and you're just like, what is happening?
Well, because again, you're used to like Michael Myers doing the slow walk, but he's also a big old dude.
Right.
So it's much more menacing to see him going slow. When you see Warwick Davis, who is not a big old dude.
No.
And he's walking slowly, it's like, great, I can outrun you. There's no terror here. So it's much more terrifying to have this little like creature person who is like you would not suspect him to move as quickly as he does. It's much more animalistic. So then that plays on the fact that like you can't reason with animals. I'm not going to be able to reason with this guy. Look at him scurrying. He's going to like launch up the walls and he's going to get me. Like it's like critters. It's the critters factor.
And
like
then my only big issue was his shoes. They're very high heel. Like he wears very high heels. And I was like, I don't know if that's like an actual stylistic choice. As I said, I don't usually see leprechauns in super high cobble like shoes, but I was like, I'm not gonna.
I have. It is like very stereotypical to have that big heel and a big buckle on the front.
Right. I knew the buckle, but the heel, I was like,
yes.
And then all I kept thinking was, man, poor Warwick Davis is having to run around in these like desert with like roots and stuff, woods. I'm like, how he didn't eat it in these high heels, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, his foot must have been in so much pain at the end of shooting.
In my notes, because I just kind of like was writing down like my stream of consciousness as I was watching it. When he was driving the tiny car and got pulled over is like my favorite. I think that's just stupidly funny. But when that happened, I was like, he takes the cop's gun.
Right.
And then all I could think of was like, oh shit, now he has a fucking gun. This is like what do you have? A knife! No! Kid. Like that was my reaction to it. There's like that whole thing with the cigarette lighter in the car.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, God, this is so 90s.
Yes.
You don't even have cigarette lighters in cars anymore. And she like burns them with it.
Yes.
The other like very 90 thing was when they're in the house and she's like, I'm gonna call the police. Where's my portable?
Yeah.
I was like, your cell phone? Who the fuck are you, Jennifer Aniston? Get out of here. And that makes me think of like, you can't do horror like that today because cell phones ruined everything. Like, unless you have a reason why they can't get reception, it's like everything can be fixed with a cell phone.
Right.
You can't just like throw people in the middle of nowhere anymore.
No.
The other dumb thing that like gets me every time is in the like ending like, you know, battle with him and stuff, segue, them throwing like the dirty shoes so he has to stop and polish them is very funny.
Yeah, so we told you he likes to cobble shoes, so they figure this out because all of Jennifer Aniston's shoes, because she's a very LA girly, she has like 10, 15 pairs of shoes. While he's in the house by himself, the leprechaun cleans and has them all lined up neatly, and she's like, what the hell is happening? So they put that together. So they literally are trying to escape the house, and they have like shoes in a box, and they're throwing them in the dirt. And he's like, what are you doing? Yeah. And so he's picking them up and rubbing the dirt off of them, and like, no, I gotta keep them clean.
It's very like, here, vampire rice, count it, vibes. But like during like that ending battle thing, there's a point because he's injured Nathan, who's like the hunky guy. He's injured his leg, and he runs past him, and he goes, "How's your leg?" and punches his leg out from under him. I was like, at this point, he's just being a dick, and it's dumb, and I cackle laugh at it.
Nathan is injured, and then like it's like they forgot because then he ends up running again, and I'm like, how is he running on his gimp leg? Like, I'm not trying to be mean, but like, how is he running on that?
I mean, adrenaline, I guess. I could be like, he's trying to save his life. Maybe he's got an adrenaline boost, but it felt so like little brother, like fucking with you in your house. How's your leg? Boom. And he just skitters away. And then they end up like blowing up the well at the end.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't know the science. I mean, like, I know gasoline will float on top of water and it will burn. I know that that's a thing. But it is such a huge explosion in that well. And it's...
I said, being a science, said, man, they must have had a shit ton of gasoline or a shit ton of methane already in that well. And then I was like, which is gross because they probably get water from the well into their... And I'm like, and I think they were drinking water, so they have methane in it. I'm like, how is this... I thought too hard. I scienced too hard.
Yeah.
Looking at that, I was like, "You're thinking too hard about it, Beth."
It like to me felt so like, shh, don't question it. It looks cool, right? Doesn't it look cool? Like when you see like a dumb movie, like I can't think of what movie it is, but it's like it's in the same vibes of like a toy car that has no gasoline in it, like crashing and exploding. In something where it's like, no, don't just like go. It's fun, so just go with it. Like, don't ask questions.
Yes,
and that's when the like "fuck you, Lucky Charms" line happens is at the end as well. So
yeah. It certainly was not. I've seen worse movies. I've seen worse movies. It was not the worst thing I've ever seen. But was I prepared for the amount of sheer just ridiculousness? No, I was not. And I'm like, I will never get this like hour and a half back. And again, Jennifer Aniston, I don't think Jennifer Aniston's a terrible actress. I like her in other stuff. I just thought she was very Rachel Green Light in this, and I was just like, is this you acting? Is this you IRL? Is Rachel close to your personality IRL? Probably. I don't know. Because I was like, this is I also liked her hair in this, and I was like, man, I want 90s bangs. They always look so good on people, and I don't think they're going to look good on me, but I want them really bad. I think about that every time I see like her or Sandra Bullock in like a 90s film, and they got the bangs that go like this. You can't see what I'm doing, listeners, but Britta knows what I'm talking about, and they go like this, and they're kind of long, and you're like,
I think they're technically curtain bangs, but they're like a very stylized curtain bang.
They're straighter than like what curtain bangs are now, because people usually go like the 70s, like they go floop. I want them, but I don't think they'll look good on me, so I won't get. Also, I get very annoyed. I mean, I have technically like curtain-esque side bangs, and I pin them back all the time. I can do full bangs. I can do no bangs. I apparently can't do in-between bangs, which is what curtain bangs are to me. I want to be one of those girlies, but I'm not. I'm a mom. I'm not there right now. I don't have time to do that. I like my regular bangs because I just go with a comb and just carry on my life.
I just cut my bangs, and I cut them differently than I normally do. And they're in that like weird new bang stage right now. So I'm not really talking about it.
Okay. Speaking of bangs, Leprechaun 2 made the very next year. That girl also had bangs.
That was bangs. Such a reach for a segue back. Also, another person who has bangs is in another movie. Let's talk about that.
We like got to the end.
Speaking of humans, there are also humans in Leprechaun 2.
This one, so I didn't realize that. So this actress appears at the beginning of the film as a different character, and then like it fast forwards through time, and you see her. I did not like her as much as I liked Jennifer Aniston, and I was like, I'm a little annoyed that they downgraded an actress quality. I don't know. That's how I felt.
I don't agree that it's a downgrade. I kind of also wonder if there is a little bit of judgment clouding because Jennifer Aniston.
Might be.
And this is like not a person that like blew up like Jennifer Aniston.
No,
did.
I was not wowed by her. Well, it also Leprechaun too. I just wasn't wowed by her performance. Also, the main character in it, I feel like I've seen him in other stuff, but nothing that I can actually remember. But he's got one of those voices that sounds like other dudes.
He has very strong Max Dennison Hocus Pocus vibes.
Yeah,
that's
might
what
be.
It is.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
It's
that makes
very Max and Allison energy, and he sounds like him. He's got that '90s hair. His personality
he's wearing
is very
very 90s outfits in this movie. Yeah, this film. Literally, you could watch this film first and not watch Leprechaun, and you would be okay because this film literally
actually gives you a little bit more backstory about Lubden.
Yes. The very beginning of the film opens up with like a scene of him walking with a guy who you find out is his human slave.
Yes,
and he's just like.
Well, there's like a little bit. Isn't he trying to run away at the beginning? Because he's chasing him, and then he catches him. And I told Beth, I was like, this scene at the beginning felt so out of place from what I was expecting because it felt like that scene in like every rom-com where like all of a sudden the guys are playing basketball and they're like talking and it's like giving exposition to move the story along. And I was like, this is like. That's what this is. It's like, oh, well, let me just walk in the woods and tell my buddy William here about what's going on. Because I'm 1,000 years old today, which means I can get married. And I was like, wow, 1,000 years. How fast? What a man.
The prosthetic, all of the production value of this movie was just amped up. The prosthetics are better. The outfit is better. The special effects are better, like his pot of gold floats. So it's like, oh, like the strings, and you see the pot of gold just like float. You don't see the strings, but you do see the pot of gold floating. All of the kills and special effects for things was amped up. So the gore is amped up a little bit. Like he rips somebody's finger that has a gold ring on completely off. And I was like, whoa, was not expecting that. But you find out through this exposition that he can get married and that he wants a wife and he is going to get this human slave's daughter. And you find out he wants to trick the daughter that if she sneezes 3 times that.
And nobody says God bless you. That's the key point. Is if you sneeze 3 times and no one says God bless you, then he can make her his bride.
So the dad of this daughter essentially foils this plan. He says, God bless you. And he's like, that's okay. One day I will. And so then the opening credit, which is cool.
I love that little timeline.
They go through this timeline of like these women who, and they land
the family line. Like you see the drawings progress through like the fashion trends of like, okay, oh, all right, this is like Tudor England. All right, this is like moving on. Oh, look, it's the 1920s. Oh, look, they got on a boat and went to America.
So that was really cool. I liked that. It's set in like LA, so completely different like place. The main guy character works for this like I recognized kind of that that type of company because of American Horror Story, but it was just this like, you go to any major city, they always have spooky tours, and so he worked for a spooky tour.
Yeah, it's like the dark side of Hollywood. So he drives like a hearse. It's like him and his Uncle Morty. The main guy's name is Cody. And
Kimmy Robertson from Twin Peaks is in this, as is Glenn Howard. I was like, what are you doing in here?
Clint Howard.
I was like, we were both like, what are you doing? Also, you have a lot of hair in this movie. What is happening?
Yeah.
Poor Ron Howard's brother. Like, that man has never caught a full break.
When I thought, is she, hang on, what's her name from Twin Peaks?
Lucy. Kimmy Robertson.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Maybe I'm confusing her with someone else. Hang on. I think she used to be on Saturday Night Live, if I'm not mistaken.
I did not look at that. I was like,
maybe I'm confusing her with somebody else. But I thought she was somebody hold please, because now it's gonna bother me and I gotta look it up on IMDb. Nope, I'm confusing with someone else. That's Victoria Jackson. Okay, so yeah, that's I also was just like, whoa, Clint Howard, what are you doing here? The whole flim flam of like, oh, I'm gonna con these tourists out of their money at the beginning thing. I was like, oh wow, what a charming scumbag artist. Like, this is very Dimitri Anastasia. Okay, this
He's
is the
got
90s.
that haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a line in there about his like uncle was just like, oh, you gotta just stop messing with that girl. She will grab your heart and tear it out of your chest and throw it. And I'm like, you know what? Vibes. All right, I'm cool. I'm here for it.
I did like, because her name's Bridget, right?
I think so.
I
yes.
I did like her. She's got kind of a labyrinth outfit going on with like the very 90s velvet corduroy green. They're like green, like almost like stirrup leggings that look like they're corduroy.
Yeah.
And then like a billowy white shirt. And oh, there's some slight nudity in this movie. Wasn't expecting that.
That's like the best unexpected kill is the guy who thinks he's about to like motorboat some titties and he gets a lawnmower to the face.
Yeah, wasn't expecting that. Essentially, the leprechaun is going after Bridget because she is the descendant of this human slave's daughter, and she is dating this kind of scumbaggy guy, and so he's going after to rescue her. His uncle Morty is the one that knows all the leprechaun knowledge that he like stops and he drops him, but Morty's also perpetually like drunk.
Yeah, and he also later ends up in a drinking contest with Lubden, which is like the most Darby O'Gill and the Leprechaun story vibes. Like that is 100% something that would have happened of like, well, I'm going to outdrink the Leprechaun and that's how we're going to get out of this.
Right.
And then the Leprechaun's got to go like sober up so it buys them time.
And then the Leprechaun essentially tries to trick them out of Bridget. So he does get Bridget. He captures her. She has to wear this like red dress and he takes her to his lair. This felt very Scooby-Doo-esque or like episode of Xena, Warrior Princess that I've seen where like she's trying to escape and she keeps circling back to the same place and she goes like, a different way and she circles back to the same place.
All those rocks, but then I was so pissed because when she was leaving the trail of rocks, like she was dropping them so close together. Yes. And I was like, you dumbass, you're gonna run out before you get out.
Yes.
But then they disappear anyway. I love that he explodes at the end. That is like a running thing through these because it's like essentially the same thing that happens in the one where he goes to space. They like suck him out the airlock into space and he freezes and explodes.
So yeah, like they make a point in this one. They establish pretty early on that like wrought iron hurts him. So that's he's killed by wrought iron in this one instead of like, and there's a subplot like he has gold and like the main character is holding on to a piece of it. And I love actually there's a bar scene in the second one where it's St. Patty's Day at the bar, which this one actually took place on St. Patty's Day, which was, I also felt like a difference between the first and the second one. Like it didn't feel like a random like encounter with the leprechaun. Like this was on St. Patty's Day, but they have all of the people with dwarfism entering the bar. And I was like, oh, this is actually the scariest part is because they're constantly, Morty and the guy are constantly looking for the leprechaun. And then they're like, not the leprechaun. Okay. Not the leprechaun. Okay. And then like, they're in the scummy bathroom and they hear the jingling of like gold and you realize it's a drunk guy with like chocolate gold coins. So and I was waiting because he had like the main character has those chocolate gold coins and I'm like, when are they going to use that? There was a point that you did that. When are they going to? And they do use that eventually at the end. He tries to trick the leprechaun. And I felt like the movie wraps up fairly quickly. Once like they try to rescue Bridget, they kind of face but I don't know, I didn't feel like the leprechaun was as menacing in the ending of the second one as he was in the first one. Like I mean,
I think once they took a hard turn into like this is a horror comedy, they cared less about him being like super scary at the end, and it was just about like outwitting him and getting away.
Right.
It's the third one is like similar. The third one is very. The majority of the third movie is two separate storylines happening in Las Vegas at the same time. One is again a pawn shop where a guy comes at the beginning with like two fake legs and a hook for a hand, and he's like, you gotta take this leprechaun statue from me. Just don't take the medallion off of it. And then the first thing the guy does as soon as he leaves is takes the medallion off, and then it like unfreezes the leprechaun so that he has been turned into a statue. But he can't do anything while the guy has the medallion. Like, he can't hurt him. It's keeping him away. So then it's just like a standoff in this pawn shop for the majority of the movie with the leprechaun and this guy like trying to like kill each other. And like the first thing he does when he gets to the like he like is unfreezes, he like bites the guy's toes off.
Why?
And then finds the medallion, and then he's just like sneaking around like trying to kill the guy. And the second storyline is this kid picks up a girl whose car broke down on the side of the road, and she's like beautiful, so he's immediately just like, well, I'll take you to work. Where do you work? And she works at a casino as a magician's assistant. And as soon as like I was rewatching this and I forgot that this had like the whole magician plotline, and I fucking hate magicians. And he's like, what do you do at the casino? And she reaches across and like pulls a quarter out of his ear. And I was like, God damn it. I forgot about this. And it's that storyline is just about how like corrupt the casino is. Like the house always wins, and how they rig the tables and stuff. And the kid ends up with one of the leprechaun's gold coins.
Okay.
And he finds out that it's lucky. So he keeps like putting it on his bets, and it'll move it to like what the correct number is going to be. So he's like winning. He's like cleaning out the house, and they're like, you got to stop him. And she tries to like rig the like wheel and it like breaks because he's lucky. He's going to win. And so they realize later that like if you have the coin and you say I wish, it grants your wish. So like the scummy casino owner like wants to bang the magician's assistant who's like much younger than him, and he's like, oh, like I wish I had a shot at her. And all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, where have you been my whole life? Let's go upstairs, I'll be so naughty. And it's like so gross. And then the like blackjack dealer, who's a woman, who he's like, everyone treats her like shit through the whole movie, realizes it's the coin. So she goes and steals it in the middle of this girl like doing like a strip tease for the guy. And then she turns around and like the coin's gone, and she is like no longer under its spell, and is like, what? Why am I up here? What did you do to me? And like is like, you know, like kicking him in the balls and like running, and is very like, I would never in my fucking life be with you, dude. So there's more of the stupid lines, and the one that got me the worst was, if you're gonna linger, I'll give you the finger. And he like shoots a gun out of his finger to kill somebody.
Oh boy.
But there's these two like goons that are like after the casino owner, and the one is like the big like beefy dude, and the other is more like the like knowledgeable enforcer. And they're so stupidly funny because they're supposed to be bad guys, but he's like, tell him. He's like, shape up or ship out. It's like something stupid. It's like advice that someone would give you. And he's like, no, not that thing. The other thing, the threat thing. And then they're like talking, and they're like, oh man, these boxers keep riding up my ass. And he's like, oh, I wear briefs. He's like, well, I like a little freedom. He's like, oh, well, I like a little support. You know, you can't let them hang loose. And so, like, this is their thing. Like, they're supposed to be the scary guys that are threatening to be there. And they're just having these, like, well, you know, you want to feel supported in your underwear, like, kind of thing. So it's just weird, but it also made me remember just like how weirdly hard we all went for like magicians in the 90s. Like Siegfried and Roy was like a huge thing.
Yeah.
And like, you know, like the magic shows in Las Vegas were like the residencies rather than like concerts like they are now.
Right.
And, like, I don't know. I hate magicians, but that's a whole other rant for a whole other time. But that is like the majority of the third one. And then, like I said, the sci-fi aspect with space in the fourth one gets weird. They're still fun because they're like dumb, but it starts to get into like weird Star Trek episode territory, and then like everyone's shirtless and like running around on a spaceship, and the leprechaun is enormous and like
oh god. Yeah, I don't think I'll watch anymore. I feel I've seen enough, and
until next year when I force her to watch the rest for a second episode.
Like, I feel enough where I'm like, okay, I feel like I've gotten a feel for this, but I don't
want to say, as like a segue, speaking about other things to watch in this realm, there is a movie that I got really excited about last year when I saw the preview for it, and then it was only ever released in Ireland and the UK.
Oh.
And it's a Red Cap horror movie.
Okay.
It's called Unwelcome. So Red Cap lore is like similar to Leprechaun lore. They tend to be a little more malicious, though.
They're darker, yeah.
But I just found out it's on Amazon, so you can watch it. It came out last year, but it's on Amazon to watch in the US. So if you're like vibing, or you're like, God, I want to watch something horror-ish for like St. Patrick's Day, but maybe not Leprechaun. You could try one of the new ones, or you could try Unwelcome and go that route with it.
Yeah, these are not my normal cup of tea is watching like action-esque movies, a very Irish American movie. So the Boondock Saints or like The Departed. Those are for sure my favorite.
I watched Darby O'Gill, and I watched The Secret of Ronin-ish, and I watched Dancing at Lunasa.
Oh.
And I watch very Irish movies.
Yeah, that's actually my pre-Tater Tot, my last St. Patty's Day before my Tater Tot debuted. I remember I was very, very, very pregnant, and for like an hour straight while I was watching The Departed, all I felt I was watching Boondock Saints. All I felt was kick, 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 kick. And it was like, it wasn't just like, I was like, husband, feel my belly, feel like really active. And then like, you know, you do that for a few minutes. You're like, okay, like it usually the kicks die down. No, this was an hour straight of just kick, 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 kick. And I'm like, what is happening? Is it because it's late? Because I'm actually staying up? Like, usually I'm going to bed at 10 and it's like 11:30. Yeah. And like, what is happening? Why are you so excited about, is it the action? Can you hear that? Like, do you know that mommy likes this movie? Like, what is happening?
I just remember the Tater Tot used to get real hype for gossip. Yeah. Like, if I was like, Beth, I have to tell you about this thing. Oh my God. Like, can you believe? And I had a very conspiratorial tone. Like, the Tater Tot would be like, pow, 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 tell me, speak up. So I wonder if it was just like very replaying in their brain in the womb, like they're just listening to like
I haven't tried Dropkick Murphys yet as like a full-fledged Tater Tot, so maybe we'll see what happens. They might love it. They might love it. They enjoy listening to Ghost because we dance to it in the kitchen. Mm-hmm. I was like, my kid's gonna have a very eclectic taste growing up, which is good.
Yeah, well, you know, enjoy yourselves. Drink responsibly, I guess.
Yeah, and yeah, if you want to watch them, these might all be on Sci-Fi. On, you know, if you still have cable,
they might be on Sci-Fi. If not, the majority of them are on Amazon.
Yes,
with, like freebie. Like there's ads now, but you can watch them for free. There's only like 2 of them that aren't. I think both of the new like reboot ones are on there. So Leprechaun Origins and Returns are both on there, I believe. So you got options.
And then just as a reminder, we are having our book club in a few episodes. So we are reading Kin by
Kaylin Patrick Burke.
That sounds right.
Is that right?
So we are reading that. We will be discussing that. So if you are interested, feel free to read that with us so you can be like, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Or, you know, you can go in blind, but we're going to have probably some spoilers. So just FYI. And yeah, if you're celebrating St. Patty's Day, be responsible. And if you're going to go out places, just be safe. And
And if you go see an Irish funeral show in the Cleveland area and you're like, wow, that person in the show sounds familiar. No, she doesn't. That's not me. Shut up.
And yeah, I usually just read like Irish or Highland like romance novels for my St. Patty's like mini celebration and watch listen to the Dropkick Murphys. So we'll see what I do. I have a tater tot now, so it's not like I don't obviously go out and party very often at all. So you guys can do that for me and enjoy all of your potato laden foods that day to soak up the alcohol.
I think yeah, I mean it's a Sunday this year, so I think it's safe to eat like your Slyman's corned beef giant sandwich and some, I don't know, hash or some Kilcannon or some Bubble and Squeak or whatever. So you're not breaking any Lenten rules.
No. All right. Well, thank you guys for going on this journey with us through the Leprechaun movies. And as always, thank you to our spooky sponsor.
Thanks, spooky sponsor.
And yeah, we hope you guys have a really great St. Patty's or St. Patrick's Day. Some people don't like
Podrig.
Yeah, they don't like calling it St. Patty's Day.
Pronounce it the real Irish way.
Podrig. And yeah, stay spooky, friends.